Welcome into this special episode today. I'm joined by David Carney, who is one of the co-founders of Tailscale and our Chief Strategy Officer, and Remy Guercio from the Strategic Projects team. Today we're going to dive into a project you may have heard about if you follow Tailscale closely, TSIDP. This is an identity server that we've been steadily pushing forward towards the 1.0 release over the last few months. And today we're going to talk about where TSIDP is headed, what role it plays in Tailscale's vision for becoming a platform in the future, and how it helps lay the groundwork for an identity layer for the internet itself. So with that lofty introduction out of the way, David, Remy, who wants to go first and sort of give us an overview of TSIDP and what it is and who it's for?
I can start with a little bit of lead in with a little bit maybe about what Tailscale does, and then Remy, maybe you can take it from there. So Tailscale is, for lack of a better term, identity first networking. So we make it easy to connect any two devices anywhere in the world, no matter where they are, with strong guarantees about identity and encryption. It's the identity piece, which is actually really fascinating, at least to us right now, because a lot of people don't understand that identity is really baked into every single connection. Like every time there's a connection, you can verify who the other person or what the other device is on the other end. And TSIDP is a way that we can actually expose more of that to applications connecting it into your, like within your tailnet and even on the outside of your tailnet. And Remy, maybe you want to take it a little bit from here.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I think at least the problem that we're trying to solve with TSIDP is, I don't know about you, but I hate logging into things. I hate having to always log into things. SSO was kind of supposed to fix that, but even with SSO, you get hit with the, every, I don't know, day, week, however long your security team wants you to, go without logging into something, you get hit again with logging into things. And, it's even more fun when you have to do a 2FA prompt or, something else on top of that. But, TSIDP is really about fixing that so that we don't have to do that anymore. You don't have to spend that time.
It's kind of in the name, right? Tailscale identity provider.
It is.
I've definitely been late for meetings because I have to click on that stupid little face thing on my OAuth provider, right? And so you're telling me TSIDP is going to help with that?
Yes. And I still know that I started on a Tuesday at Tailscale because we have a weekly reauth. And Tuesday, always without a fail, I get hit with the "you're logged out. You should log back in."
So what is TSIDP exactly? I know it's something to do with OpenID Connect, but what is that, and where does TSIDP fit in that jigsaw?
Yeah, so like Carney mentioned, identity is baked into the Tailscale network, and what TSIDP really is here is where it's a lightweight OpenID, OIDC, OpenID, and OAuth authorization server. And what it does is it leverages that identity on your network that exists on the network. And you can run it inside of your private Tailscale network. And so, when you go to, you have a OAuth app on your network, doesn't actually have to be on your network, but if you do, it's going to redirect you just kind of like normally, like you would expect when you go to click on the button, it's going to redirect you to TSIDP. Conveniently, TSIDP happens to know who you are as soon as you get redirected, and it can verify that and send you right back. So it's this convenient little thing that sits on your network to make your life a little bit easier.
So how does it know who you are? Is that because I'm already authenticated through the Tailscale client on my phone or my laptop?
Yeah. So you log into Tailscale, right? You're logging into the network. You're using your existing corporate IDP, that you have set up to log into Tailscale, and so that's the you part, right? You're logging into the network, and then on TSIDP side, it actually uses a fun thing that we have called TSNet, which is a little Go library that can basically listen for and kind of run effectively like a whois on incoming connections and get the identity from the network. TSIDP is a Go application, TSNet is a little Go library, and we get to use that there. But people can also use TSNet themselves. It's not limited just to us. So
The way I like to think about it or explain TSIDP, it's like almost running a small little mirror of your identity provider inside of your network. So it's got all the same kind of capabilities, or at least what you've granted to the tailnet to begin with. And because it's effectively a private instance, you can do nice little things. You can set up like little security rules and things that are related to it that you don't necessarily have to share with with your primary identity provider.
So what kind of products in the marketplace is it most analogous to? I don't wish to draw direct comparisons because I know it's still early days for TSIDP, but we've got big plans for it.
I think people would probably think of it most akin to kind of like an Authentic, or kind of like one of the little self-hosted IDPs that you might run within your network. However, I will say on TSIDP's, kind of the difference there is it's intended to be incredibly simple to set up and start using, right? It's really just mirroring your existing, Google, Entra ID, Okta IDP inside of the network, and then providing you with all the, extra little Tailscale benefits on top of that. So works a whole lot like one you might host yourself, but again, aimed to be a lot more simple to actually use.
I think the unique thing here is that it leverages the identity that's already part of the tailnet. But so can you talk to me a little bit about how we did it?
How do we do it? Because identity is baked into every connection inside of Tailscale. It's in the headers, for instance, and there's strong guarantees about that Tailscale enforces. Little apps inside of the network, if they can connect to it, can read those headers and understand them, and from that it can infer who's connecting to what. Right? TSNet is basically that, it's a small little open source application that runs inside of your network that can do that. It's essentially a full user space implementation of Tailscale that, from an external point of view, just looks like another little node. Right? But what you can do is you can plug applications into TSNet, and then those things immediately become services, just like a machine would, somebody authenticating a server or a laptop or an iPhone. And so we built TSIDP, and it plugs into your tailnet with TSNet. And then from that, TSIDP can effectively just act as, an identity provider, because it can see the identity through the network. Right? So it's really a combination of just technologies that are built on a lot of all the complexity that we've hidden away with Tailscale. It's very simple. They're both open source. In our community projects, and people should check them out if they want to dig into the details. But the source code is definitely quite grokkable.
I'll put a link in the description down below, of course, to the community projects that David just referenced there. But Remy, I know that you replaced your authentication flow for Grafana with TSIDP. How's that been?
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So, again, run Grafana on my local network, right? Just as a kind of a, fun way of visualizing some things.
As us home labbers tend to do, yes.
Fun way of visualizing some things around the house. I have a air quality monitor that's, that kind of throws out a bunch of metrics that I love to graph.
By Jove, you know what the pollen count was 17 days ago at 3:02 p.m.
Yes, I do. I also have a 3D printer that I run in my office, so I do like to kind of keep track of, all the particulates that are maybe in the air from that. So, it sits right there on top of it. But yeah, I like to, graph and, and look at all of that. But yeah, typically logging into Grafana, right? Username and password, or, you're going to set up SSO in front of it. But Grafana also, what Grafana happens to also do, which is quite cool, is so, you go set up TSIDP as a custom, OIDC provider in Grafana, and they have a very convenient little feature that you can add or you can turn on, and that is, it will automatically, if it's the only auth provider configured, it will automatically bump you over to TSIDP to then authenticate and send you back. So now when I go to Grafana, I don't even do anything. I just go to Grafana. It bumps me to TSIDP. TSIDP is I'm good, and I get bumped all the way back. So it's completely zero click. I just log into Grafana all of a sudden, which is, quite nice in a home lab, especially where I don't want to do any of that or remember any of that. And I just want to be in Grafana. So,
which gets me thinking about what some of the other use cases in the future might be. I know that AI and MCP servers are a bit of a buzzword in 2025, but you two have been playing around with TSIDP and MCP servers, haven't you?
A little bit. Our customers have been playing around with them a lot more than we have. And yeah, like the conventional pattern just with Tailscale is like, oh, I'm just going to put everything inside of the tailnet and treat it as local, and everything just works. Uh, in practice, that's not really how MCP works. You've got usually some local clients, and then you've got a whole bunch of things that are remote. And sometimes you can pull some of these things into your network, but a lot of the times they're on the outside. And that was actually one of the problems we sought to, well, I guess, address with some recent extensions to TSIDP. And Remy, maybe you can go into detail about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so, I mean, if anybody's not familiar necessarily with MCP, MCP is really, it's just a way for like your LLM. So like if you're using Claude Desktop or Claude Code or, ChatGPT or things like that, you want to give it access to something, right? So like you can just have a conversation with it, of course, but right, you want to give it access to some data or documentation or, things that you have. And, up until recently, basically June, so you build an MCP server, you expose it, and and the LLM can go call it and use it. But up until very recently, basically there was no authentication on top of this. It was just kind of like you were kind of expected to use these MCP servers locally, and like maybe use an API key, right? They were just running local, and you were just going to kind of you give an API key and it go make some calls. Obviously there was a proliferation of like MCP tools that run not just locally on your laptop, but, or wherever you happen to be running things, but over the network as well. So, sometimes they're public, right? You might have like the GitHub MCP, but sometimes, in a lot of cases, we talk to folks, especially in the enterprise, they don't want to run local MCP servers on everybody's computer across the thing, but they also don't want their MCP server to be public. So, and they need to kind of figure that out. And, so recently into the spec, recently into the MCP spec, the MCP committee added, like a whole authorization standard. And basically what they said was, OAuth works, looks good. We can adopt the most recent stuff. And they basically just said, hey, we'll take it all. Whether or not it's, widely implemented or not, we'll just take it all. It's all, this is useful. And they said, we'll do that. And that's how you're going to need to build, that's if you want to build, authorized MCP servers in a spec compliant way, you're going to need to adopt quite a few things. And so, what we realized is, tons of identity providers don't necessarily support the things that the MCP committee, said, hey, you should use. Dynamic client registration. So basically a way for your, MCP client to, automatically register itself, is a kind of a prime example of something that's not very widely implemented. Hey, we have TSIDP. It's a little identity provider. It runs in, it sits in front of your existing identity provider. Maybe, let's try extending it. Let's try adding all of these things for, the MCP spec. And so, yeah, we did. It works. If you're running MCP servers, inside your, your Tailscale network, you can, and you want them to be authorized still, right? It's, maybe a little bit bigger than your home lab, but, it's not like a publicly available MCP server, something you're trying to do for your, at your company. You can use TSIDP to do, to support authorization for those without having to think really about, whether or not your identity provider supports, X, Y, or Z. So
putting anything on the network without any form of authentication is just not going to be really an acceptable thing in SecOps. So my question back to you really is, what kinds of use cases are you seeing customers doing with MCP servers? Is it stuff like creating chatbots for their internal documentation, or like what kind of stuff are they doing?
I think if you kind of like go out and you listen to folks and you kind of, you're on Reddit or Twitter or something like that, right? And you're, trying to, you're kind of just like listening to the buzz, you'll hear a lot about like, documentation, like using MCP to, grab documentation or like do like automated testing. I think, like Playwright's a big one that you kind of hear a lot about. But I think in the, enterprise, and a lot of what we're, kind of like what we hear folks is, really they have some like custom data source, you could basically say, right? Some custom set of there's like documents or like a, custom, they have data, right? And they want to be able to expose it. They want to be able to expose it to, they want to be able to expose it as an MCP server. And they're, right now they're asking the question of like, how do we do that safely? And there's a lot that's really out there, right? That you need to do this safely.
Yeah, I think the power comes when you're trying to connect multiple data sources together. So, for example, you want to, I don't know, book a trip or something. You've got to take in flights and dates and a bunch of business logic about expense policies and this, that, and the other, right? And trying to synthesize all that data together without some glue to put it all together, which is what the MCP servers are doing, I believe, is going to be tricky. So
yeah,
even if your IDP doesn't support all those things, can people still benefit from TSIDP and MCP somehow?
That's the whole, kind of goal of TSIDP. I hate to say shim but it's like, it's basically, it lets you experiment with these, authorized MCP servers and things like that, without, again, needing to kind of rethink what IDP you're using or kind of, I know a lot of the kind of MCP server builders out there are trying to have to build like these OAuth proxy, OAuth shim kind of things to make it where, like things support it. You don't have to do that with TSIDP. We've already done it, right? You're going to get all of the nice, you get the nice warm fuzzy blanket of, Tailscale's network access controls, private network, those sorts of things. And then you get the, the identity bit on top of it, that works for both your existing apps, right? The Grafanas and everything like that. And, the new sort of MCP, MCP stuff you're trying to experiment with.
There's a few things I want to touch on in particular. So, like what everything that's Remy said is true, but I guess from an enterprise point of view, right? There's a bunch of really interesting, I guess, characteristics that TSIDP introduces. And so, yes, a lot of existing identity providers aren't what I would call MCP spec compliant in terms of what they offer. Like Remy mentioned, a lot of them don't support dynamic client registration, right? Because we're effectively a mirror of your existing identity provider, we can build those things in, and we've done that. So we've basically provided a way to like level up existing identity providers to make them more MCP compliant, so people can use those for MCP kinds of workloads to bring them up to what the spec requires. Secondly, all this obviously works inside of a tailnet. It also works with MCP servers outside of your tailnet.
Huh? How? What?
So yeah. So this is part of the magic. There's another great feature called Tailscale Funnel, which lets you take an internal service and expose it publicly. And you can use Funnel in combination with TSIDP to basically put the service running on an externally accessible port or address, so that external services, such as like Salesforce, for instance, or an MCP server or something else, so we can extend the OAuth flow outside of the network to those particular services that are having requests sent to them from inside.
Without those services needing to modify a single thing other than their callback endpoint or whatever.
Right. But yeah, so if they use OAuth, like we basically extend the OAuth boundary to things outside of the network. So you can plug OAuth capable things in. So this is basically a way that, you've got your nice secure tailnet, you've got your ACLs, you've got everything else inside of it, you've got your strong notion of identity, and you can go to like MCP registries and start using those things as long as they use OAuth, right? Which the MCP spec requires, and just people are starting to build this kind of stuff now. So I think that's incredible. And then I guess the third thing is, and Remy touched on this too, a lot from an enterprise use case, you don't want a lot of, maybe not direct connections. You don't want a lot of connections between clients and servers. Standard security pattern is like you'll build some kind of proxy or a gateway, because you'll run them through that, because you want to be able to like audit everything and control everything. You want tons of logs. You want to be able to cut off access if you need to. And a big problem with running a thing through a gateway is there's this handoff, and so that somebody on the other side of a gateway would say like, oh, the gateway's making this request, but who's actually making the original request? And so we've improved TSIDP so that, say, the MCP server that is receiving the request from a gateway can actually tell who it's from directly. So there's a way to basically do, like, it's called a token exchange. And so we support that as well. So things like identity delegation works if you're running an MCP proxy or gateway inside of Tailscale as well. And the last thing I'll add, and this is a lot of things, is that this isn't just for MCP. It's basically anything that works with OAuth, right? So MCP is a really important and very hot topic, but we're building this just for identity in general. And so you can, there's other protocols or systems out there where people are trying to do these kinds of things or plug identity-aware services into their networks. And that's really what this technology is all about.
So my logical question, follow up with my security hat on, is if this service is running on my tailnet and we are making things easy to connect to, as a security guy, I don't like that. I like to be able to lock things down. I like to be able to create rule sets that says, accounts can't access production except, well, I don't know if I ever want accounts accessing production, but you know what I mean? Like, can we leverage some of the features built right into Tailscale, like ACLs and grants and that kind of thing, to control access too? Is that possible?
The short answer is yes. So there's, at a high level, there's ACLs, which we already have inside of Tailscale, which dictate who is allowed to connect to what. And so that if something is initiated or successfully connected to you, you already have a guarantee that, the ACLs let this happen, right? But then on top of that, you can add meta information so that, say, an MCP server can look at the headers and inspect it, and it's like, well, I already know who's on the other side, but I can look for this additional information that also comes with a request to make decisions, maybe like role-based decisions about what I'm supposed to do, right? Remy can maybe go into a little bit more detail about it.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys was on mute, but I don't know if you could feel me getting excited. So yeah, what's really cool here is, yes, we can leverage like all of the existing things about Tailscale, when you're using TSIDP as well. So, we touched on this just a little bit at the very beginning. And one of the big things is, we have device posture rules, in Tailscale, right? So,
think of that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So right, you don't want somebody to log into something unless they, let's say you've got TSIDP in front of some sensitive things.
Right. You only want people to log in if they're on iOS 26 or something.
Yep.
Right?
You don't want them to log in. You don't want them to, hey, I want you to be on a corporate managed device to be able to use, TSIDP.
With liquid glass only permitted.
Yes, liquid glass only. Yes. It has to be the newest and latest. I mean, we do support OS version. You can, can specify that. CrowdStrike Falcon score, you can put that in front of somebody being able to, actually hit TSIDP to be able to authenticate into anything. And there's one other thing is, we I know Alex, you've talked about this before on the channel, but just-in-time access is another pattern that you can actually put in front of TSIDP if you want to. So very flexible. The access control rules with Tailscale are incredibly flexible, very powerful, and you get to use them with TSIDP. So it's very fun.
Well, you just broke TSIDP out into its own GitHub repo. It used to be part of the Tailscale main repository. It's now its own standalone thing. So are we letting people loose on this thing? Is it ready to go? Can they get started?
Yeah. So today, you can get started today. It's on our GitHub, Tailscale/TSIDP. Like you mentioned, it's an own repo now. We did that really, we wanted to help improve the visibility of TSIDP, right? We want people trying it out. We want people using it. We want your feedback. Would absolutely love folks' feedback. That's really what we're looking for. And,
what's the right mechanism for that feedback? Is it a GitHub issue?
Yep. Yeah. So just file a GitHub issue. You can join us on Discord. We recently launched Tailscale. We have a
discord.gg/Tailscale, by the way.
There we go. And so, you can go there. We have a TSIDP channel, in Discord. So, please come join, come let us know what you think. And yeah, so, we're hoping for feedback, especially even, there's the kind of the home lab app situation. There's the, corporate app situation. That's a little more like, we want your feedback and stuff. It's a little more, it's been around for a while. I've
been using it to log into my Proxmox for the last 9 months and it's been working great. So,
yep. So, that's been around for a while, right? But on the MCP side, all right, that auth spec, came out in June. It's moving
Brand new.
fast. If you're in the MCP space at all, you realize just how fast everything's moving. So, we're actively developing this. We're, soliciting feedback on, all of the new things that are out there. If you're building an MCP server, if you're building an MCP gateway, we would love to talk with you. We would love to make your life easier.
Reach out via the Discord or a GitHub issue, and I'll put you in touch with Remy or Carney over there. So before we wrap, anywhere else you'd like to send people to look at stuff?
I was going to say, if you want to build something cool like this yourself, we don't want to have all the fun, but I would also encourage you, and you like to write Go, or you maybe like to have Claude Code or somebody write some Go for you. If you want to do that, I really encourage you to check out TSNet. It is, like we mentioned, it is the kind of the core of what we use to build TSIDP. It gives you that identity bit. It lets your app, anything built with TSNet, you can basically have, it shows up on your Tailscale network. Please, check that out. Try building something, that runs on Tailscale.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. By the way, all of this is available for free on every single Tailscale pricing tier that we have, right the way from our free plan, our personal plan, all the way up to enterprise plans. So there's no gatekeeping or anything like that there. And you can get started today by heading over to tailscale.com, sign up for a free account, 100 devices and 3 users, completely for free. I don't think you'll find a more generous free tier than that in the segment. So thank you both for joining me today. And until next time, I've been Alex from Tailscale.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex.
All right. Thank you.